Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the first talk tonight. I'm delighted to be here with Shay Aden and Mavetjiua. I'm Sarah Allen, I'm Head of Programme at South London Gallery, and I was asked to come here tonight because it is South London themed, so I work at the gallery, but also because we very recently did a show called Lagos Peckham Repeat, which really looked at making connections between Lagos and Peckham. Obviously, it's in the title, but as a kind of homage to the largest Nigerian diaspora community that lives in Peckham. So I'm gonna start very briefly, because it's a quick talk, with a couple of little snaps from that show. So the first work is Shay's work, and Shay's going to talk about that in a little bit, but this is an install of the main space. And so really some of the kind of ambitions of the show were to commission new work. Almost half of the work was new commissions, which is really exciting. We had kind of artists like Ndidi DK, kind of very established figures, but then younger artists like Tamateo Shonabare, all making work a lot kind of within the community, like looking at the specific history of Peckham and trying to make connections back to Lagos. So one of the slides I've got here, sorry, my clicker, is Tamateo Agunbi, who made this absolutely beautiful interactive clay sculpture, which made a direct connection between Peckham and Lagos, because the lines that are in the sculpture are the lines that you draw on a map if you that basically make a journey from all the way from Lagos to Peckham, whether it be by flight, but the pathways also that lead you down to the gallery. So that was just one of the commissions. I'm just gonna see if Emeka Ogbo's beer is here, which was kind of my favorite, well, not my favorite, can't choose favorites, but one of my favorite works, because it was such a massive undertaking for the exhibition to basically brew a beer. My colleague Lily became a master brewer in beer. Emeka wanted to make a beer that was evocative of the flavors that he associates with Lagos. And he called it No Food for Lazy Man, to kind of signal to that idea of migrant resilience. And Emeka is a really important artist to have on the show as well, because he has these fantastic Lagosian soundscapes which really evoke the kind of dynamic atmosphere of the city of Lagos. So I'm going to stop talking about the Lagos show now, because I've got two wonderful speakers here with me. But it was through this research for this show that I met Shay, because I was in Nigeria on a research trip, which very coincidentally coincided with the launch of the Yinka Shonabare Gas Foundation international launch. There's lots of events taking place, and you had a performance on, which I happened to go to, and we got to meet. And then you know, from that you were in the show, and you're going to talk a little bit about kind of the two ways basically you engaged with the show. Which would you like to talk about first? Open Plan Commission?
Maybe I will actually talk about the Lagos, just because you mentioned it first, and I guess that's how we met. Yeah. Sarah came to the performance I did to close the residency I was doing at Gas Foundation, and I guess it's good to talk about that because the performance had some influence to the work I did in Lagos Peckham Repeat. So the performance I was doing was looking at bodies of water within Nigeria, thinking about the spiritual relationship in Isheshe culture, in Isheshe spiritual practice, which is a Yoruba spiritual practice, and the relationship to water within these rituals, but also the fact that 70% of the water in Nigeria is also polluted, and what is a change in relationship to water within the Nigerian culture. So as I was doing my residency, I was collecting lots of water, and some of that water ended up in the final piece, which was titled Adore Water, or Water, with a pigeon for water. And so it was a mixture of natural dyes. Originally, actually, I wanted to bring like sewage water back, but I don't think people were that keen on it. But that was actually part of the performance, so I actually invited a lot of people to come up and burst different waters on my body. Some was sewage water, some was agbo, which is the name for like herbal medicine that you get from the market. But the thing is that the agbo looks as dirty as the sewage water, but can cure malaria and colds and all different types. So it's thinking about what you see is not always what is what is true, or what you perceive. So with Adore water, Adore means tie and dye in Yoruba, and it is indigo tie and dye fabric. And the pattern that was made in the sculpture was one of the traditional tie and dye symbols, which is Adore Oniko. And it was the liquid is a mixture of indigo from Abeokuta, which is a city in Nigeria, which is not too far from Lagos, but also natural dyes from cabbage that I bought from Peckham and different natural dyes. And I was thinking about the waters from in different countries and the connection of water, and also the water as a medium of migration and transportation as well, and the alchemy of water that can, within the process of Adore, because it's an alchemy of change, you working with the indigo, and it's also a means of storytelling. So that was a piece, it was in the fire station?
Yes, yeah, it was in the fire station, in kind of beautiful position because it's suspended over the viewer as they come in the main door, so you get lots of different views underneath as you walk up the stairs. Not easy to install, but we got there.
Yeah, it was a bit longer than I planned. And then that also, but the original connection and the offer invitation was actually to do the residency at South London Gallery, which is, the residency is called Open Plan. And I guess I'm going to speak for Sarah, but they get an artist every year to do this residency, working with one of the estates that surround the South London Gallery. So the offer was to create a temporary installation in Pelican Estate, which backs the fire station, which is what you saw in the previous picture. And I'm an installation artist, usually make architectural installations, also do movement and performance. But when I was thinking about an installation, it kind of manifested into the need for thinking about land practices and connecting to growing. And the proposal that I presented was titled The Diaspora Gardens, to build a garden. Now, obviously, the nature of temporary and a garden doesn't really make sense. So there was a thought about the legacy of it, but it came from the need to think about Peckham has one of the biggest diasporic communities of Nigerians, but also has a big diasporic of community from Latin America and all over. And this green space in the estate wasn't really used, and it was an opportunity for the allotment team to get involved and start really getting people more engaged with gardening, and to plant culturally appropriate vegetables that people could relate to. So there was like Nigerian basil that we grew, there was garden eggs, there was Scotch bonnets, bird's eye chilies, callaloo, amaranth. Could go on. Oh, an amazing cucumber that looked like a dinosaur egg from the Himalayas, which we all got from Mitesfield's community garden in Lambeth. There we go. They all donated them. And it was all about being a site for connection, and also to remind people of their right to healthy food, and also thinking about how food and growing can help you reclaim your self-empowerment as well.
Fantastic. And I suppose because we were talking about Lagos there and the importance of, well, it was just fantastic to be able to go there myself and meet artists and experience so many things. I wanted to come to you, Mave, and ask, well, firstly, could you give us a little bit of background about the Africa Centre and your role, maybe, but also maybe tell us a little bit about how the Centre engages with institutions or artists in Africa.
Hello. So yeah, I am the programs officer at the Africa Centre, 2 months into the role, so don't expect too much. Just kidding. So basically, the centre is now based in Southwark. It was originally in Covent Garden, but I think the move to Southwark kind of emphasizes the desire to engage with and orient itself around the African diaspora in London, because Southwark is the borough home to the largest percentage of people of African descent in London. I think that, so the center is like a cultural center, it's a community space. Originally, I think it was a lot kind of more state-focused in the sense that it was like built to kind of create these like soft power connections between the UK and like newly independent African countries. But since then, there's like been at least an attempt to like turn more towards the community. I think a lot of engagement with institutions on the continent kind of is, again, a desire, but like a barrier that like we face, but also responsibility that we have as like being a site for the African diaspora in kind of like the heart of empire, because like visa restrictions, visa costs, kind of just the time it takes to get people from the continent if the center is like the one kind of facilitating that. But so I think that that's why the focus has been like people of the diaspora kind of in London.
Nice. And we were talking a little bit at the start about kind of what you're generally doing, because it's programming, but also what was really nice is to hear that it's quite reactive, like you're able to take proposals from artists. So that, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think arts programming is like a big part of what the center does, because there is a gallery space. So we get proposals from like people kind of across disciplines and backgrounds, and I think we like are trying to kind of do those along like different themes, which is often, again, hard like without set resources, but I think something that kind of makes the center unique amongst like the unique or important even like among the cultural landscape of London and the UK is that it like centers and prioritizes like African and Black voices. I know like there are many galleries and institutions that will have kind of one-off focuses on shows like celebrating African artists or things of that nature, but as kind of challenging as it is, I think it's like just very necessary to have those kind of spaces, and I think that the challenges that the center faces kind of speak to, yeah, the limits with which you can program resource-wise, again, around those, if that makes sense, but yeah.
It definitely makes sense, and I think most cultural institutions are under a lot of pressure and are facing a lot of challenges, like you say, at the moment. Do you feel like collaboration within London is something that you're kind of moving more towards? We see it maybe a little bit less, London institutions collaborating, but just curious to know what your opinion is on that.
I mean, yeah, so we, like, I don't know if people here are familiar with, like, the Almas Foundation, for instance. That's, like, an art center in London that the Africa Center has now, like, a partnership with, where they'll have, like, exhibitions quarterly at the center. So it's, like, good, I guess, for exposure on both ends. I think, like, more kind of powerful collaborations are, like, between powerful, but then similarly, like, can be unequal institutions and individuals, but I think that's like that's where more of like the I don't know if platforming is the right word, but like that's where more of the value would come, I think, but yeah, I think there's obviously power in numbers in the sense that like institutions pooling together and just kind of showing their necessity is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we're more powerful together, and you don't have to be the only institution to do something. You can kind of club together and make something more meaningful. I wanted to come back to you, Shay, to ask, within that idea of like challenges that institutions face, and kind of working with communities is often, can be a very fraught area of engagement. It's not necessarily easy. It's something that South London Gallery have a very long-standing commitment to, and it's a lot of work we put behind it. But I wanted to ask you very honestly, what were the main challenges you kind of came, or how did you approach, what were the strategies you had when you came to crafting this open plan commission and working with the community?
So I think the hardest thing, I think, one is that the project, obviously, you can never have enough time in a community project. And I think, like, what is a really important thing that I actually had to write a note to, like, make sure I say, it's like, at the core of, like, every community project is really, like, the foundation is building relationships, which means building trust, and that takes time, and therefore you can't really, like, rush relationship building, but also the need within the community will always be there, even when you leave, and therefore, like, you always need more time, basically. And I think it's important to always remember, like, so the big question for me was the legacy of the project, because when I go, who are the people within the community or elsewhere that can continue some form of it, like, after? And so even though it no longer is a vegetable garden at the moment, it's turning into a herb garden, which is, like, less maintenance. And also Tanya, love Tanya, who works at the After School Club in Art Block, which is also an art South London gallery space in another estate. She collected all the seeds from a lot of the vegetables, and they're sowing them with the kids this summer. So that made me really happy, like, to hear that is continuing. But also I think the challenge is getting there's so many voices within the community, you can't please everyone. And especially when you're working within someone's living space, like, these are the residents have, like, grown up here, they have family here, and then you come in. Like, it was important that the project got approved in the TRA meeting and that everyone was happy with it, that we didn't offend any of the neighbors whose, like, backyard actually backed the garden, that we respected all of their, like, requirements. And another big thing, I think, was how to, like, gain interest in something that is a activity that people aren't used to. So all the sessions, even though there was a garden there, a lot of the work was programming workshops. So we had herbal balm workshops where I got different land practitioners, gardeners to come in and do different workshops. So, you know, thinking about nature, not just in the form of growing, but also, like, the other things that you can do and practices that relate to it. And there very much was, like, thinking about timing. So a lot of people had kids, thinking about how it could coincide with the after school clubs and the other, like, activities and people's like, jobs, and making sure that it was the programming was as accessible as possible, that so people didn't need to change their plans, they could just turn up. And sometimes they didn't need to get involved in anything. It was actually, sometimes it was just one of the women whose back garden backed the garden. She just came because she wanted to speak to someone and just come and sit and chat, and that was, like, the most rewarding thing, to see her come, like, regularly. So it's really thinking about different forms of engagement, and I think also with community projects, it's changing your way, moving away from a quantitative way of valuing or measuring success to a more qualitative. So rather than numbers and how many people showed up, it's more like, did this person get to speak to someone? You know, seeing people talk or, like, make a connection, like, how do they feel during that activity, rather than, you know, there was times where it was only, like, 3 kids who turned up, but they all got to do something fun and they didn't want to leave. So that meant a lot to me, more than the amount of people who came but didn't really engage.
Yeah, there was such a variety in the workshops, really. Yeah. The cyanotype was my favorite at the end.
Cyanotype, there was a movement workshop, there was a sound bath, which the kids loved and even did the crystal bowls. They were, like, so into it, into the meditation. There was a whole workshop around food sovereignty and thinking and, like, tasting and very sensory way of engaging with foods. What else was there? I can't remember.
There was the lip balm, I remember that.
The lip balm, yep.
The meditation, the the breath work. Remember box breathing?
Yes.
Anyway, it was fantastic. There was just so much variety that you could just sense that there's something for everyone in it, and we did get so much positive feedback from the commission. So thank you for that. I mean, I have to keep an eye on the time because these art chats are very rapid fire, and we're already at 20 past, which is when we said we would go to audience questions to make sure everyone had a chance to ask a question. So if there is audience questions, please fire away. Looks like we have one here in the front.
Hi. I really like the project. I never saw your work, sorry, I just came here by, and I really like it. And I was thinking that how to preserve it in time, like how you were saying that it's a garden, no longer vegetables, nobody's like growing, right?
Yeah, it's transitioned into a herb garden, so like rosemary, like sage, trying to grow like more hardy, like I always can't say that word, I'm dyslexic. Perennials? The ones that don't basically, yeah, so less maintenance. So like, sometimes we call them physic gardens. They're usually also like herbs that are also really medicinal as well. So they can still be consumed, but they don't have the whole kind of, every year you have to like do a lot of labor.
And how you think that could like sustain, like not become that kind of garden, but yeah, if the community gets to the garden and say, okay, we can do it every year, how you think that could improve, or if it needs to improve in that way, or if an improvement, or it's just the process that it's going on with the community, or yeah, like how to engage more with the community in that sense?
Yeah, yeah, it's something I thought a lot about, and I think it was a challenge when there was a time period of how much I could engage, but what is really great is that Rachel, who was the producer at the time, was at South London Gallery for like 10 years and knew lots of people, knew the residents really well. And there is an ongoing relationship. So the fact that I wasn't no longer doing the project, there was still a relationship going on with South London Gallery, and still is, even to today. And what was helpful also, that there was already an allotment team who had some allotments, but they were struggling to get people interested, but they also wanted to learn. So there was a question I was thinking about, like whether there was ways of, which I feel like it's a whole project in itself, a separate one of like, is there funding to help train people in the estate who want to learn more about gardening? Because there was a lot of, what I heard a lot was people were interested, but the confidence wasn't there in getting engaged or doing the work. Oh, well, I'm not a gardener yet, I don't know enough. The imposter syndrome, right? So then there's a whole project about like, where do you get that? How do you support people who don't have the time, the finances, they have care responsibilities, to give them the time to like, because there are free courses out there, but people don't have the time to do them. So you kind of actually need to sometimes pay people to be educated, which I think is important and should be done, especially people who don't have access for different reasons. So I feel like that's what I see as like, in order for something longer term to be developed, it's actually about a training and educational like program which is funded.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Got one at the front here. Where's that roving mic?
You had their hand up?
Hi, thank you for your sharing today. My question is to the entire panel around what you guys think is, what kind of questions you want to continue exploring, I guess, in your respective practices, roles, and how do you imagine your responsibility to South London changing as like we move, like, you know, post-pandemic, you know, all that's going on. So how do you imagine your responsibility to South London?
Mavet, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I guess, so like, for instance, the Africa Center, if it struggles with funding or what have you, like it still has like a space, and I think that's like really crucial and important, and if it can be like made accessible, I think like the biggest kind of responsibility for people or institutions like with property at this stage is like to kind of use those as like posts for people like who want to convene, either whether it be like for education, for organizing. I mean, I guess like within the Africa Center, there are multiple like themes that would intersect with like needing to kind of like, bring people together to learn more about like the state of like migrant issues, queer like issues, repression. Obviously we see so much happening on the African continent, like when it comes to colonial era, like policing of being queer. But I think that via the Africa Center's responsibility to South London is just to be kind of not like using, like to be at the kind of, I don't know if expense is the right phrase, but expense of the community, in the sense that like being open to, what is needed, at least space-wise, if that's the only thing that can be offered.
Shay?
We don't have a mic anymore, but I think I can remember the question, so I'll try my best.
Responsibility to South London.
Okay, cool. Yeah. For me, I also live in South London, and whilst I was doing the residency and doing the project, I connected with one of the women and parents who then asked me to do something for their after-school club. And that felt so rewarding, to do art projects that aren't really in an art space. You know, the organization was called like Spring, like Summer Club, and they just basically created like clubs during after school and during the holidays for the kids and families to do activities. And I feel like the responsibility, especially as people who are maybe literate in the art world and maybe can understand how to like access funding, is about partnering with other people who aren't in that space. And ideally it would be great to like actually create a project with people from the beginning, like the root, and like do that collaboration from the get-go with someone who is really part of a community and has an idea of how they could, you know, offer a service in some way.
Amazing, that's both fantastic answers. We've 1 more minute until we finish. So I guess I just briefly say from my side, I suppose there's 2 things. It will be continuing to make sure resources bow-guarded or ring-fenced or whatever word you want to put on it for our community work. We engage with 3 social housing estates that are neighbours to South London Gallery, so it's making sure that that's the top of our agenda in our fundraising endeavours. And also that a show like Lagos Peckham Repeat, which was a massive effort, and we kind of folded everything we do at South London Gallery into that show. With regards to like open plan commissions, education, everything started to pivot around that show, but trying to not let the legacy of that show just dissipate, and think about how we can continue to engage with the audiences that we saw come to that show, and that we really did have a noted change in the kind of visitors we were getting. So we're going to be doing some programming that will be a kind of legacy event for Nigerian Independence Day, to make sure that we're continuing to think about that show and the audiences that we cultivated. But yeah, I think we'll have to, I heard we need to be very snappy in our wrap up, so I think we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you so much to our 2 wonderful speakers today.
Thank you.
freestyle. So
hi guys.
Hi. Yeah, hi. Sorry for keeping you. We're a bit late.
Yeah, no,
apparently.
So my name is Soldier. I'm an artist, and I'm with my friend Blondey, skater, artist, and owner of the brand called Thames. Am I right?
Yes, Thames.
Thames.
Yeah, you should know. I mean, how long have you lived in London for now?
I'm Nigerian. My bad.
How many of shoots for Thames have you done? Yeah. Well, it's Thames, just to clarify.
Yeah.
But otherwise accurate. Otherwise an accurate biography. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the first question is, so how did you start making work? How did you start creating? How did you get into what you got into?
By accident, sort of, but at the same time the opposite. At the same time, sort of all that I ever really wanted to do. You know, I was thinking about, in Goodfellas when he says, "Ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster." I really like that intro. But I always think, ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be a. And I don't really know. I've got the conviction, but I don't know what the word for it is, because I like making clothes, but I don't really consider myself a designer. I like skating, but I don't really consider myself an athlete. I love, as we've done together, taking pictures of the clothes I've designed on people I like and situations which I find interesting, but I don't consider myself a photographer. I consider myself lucky to be doing what I do, which is varied in a time where that is, possible, really, and I suppose encouraged, or I don't know, it's just feasible, isn't it? So, to give you the sort of outline, as I was asked to, for my so-called career as an artist or a creative, it started with this this thing which I found earlier. It's probably too small to really read for any of you, but it's an explanation of a sticker in the way that you're sort of asked to explain something like a sticker, because I was actually at school. That is actually my GCSE coursework. Yeah. Is that the word? I suppose. Because the kind of art that I was really inspired by when I was young, after drawing, all kids sort of draw and some stop and some don't, and I drew cartoons and then toys, or the reverse, and then the kind of art which I was really inspired by was the kind which really typically suited skateboards and T-shirts and stickers and products, really. Yeah. So it was really more design, I suppose, technically. And so the art that I was inspired by was that. So the art which I was making was that, but not consciously. So I made that out of a newspaper cut out of Beth Tweddle in 2012 after the London Olympics. And made that sticker and that brand, created that brand almost unknowingly, because that was just the kind of art which I liked doing. So making art that was inspired by the kind of art which goes on stickers, and then making stickers out of that art, was not me consciously making a brand, but that's what it was. And then a couple of years later, I've got my little clicker here, we did Thames. The company was more of a typical company. Yeah. I had business partners in Palace who I skated for at the time, and the kind of art which I was making was intended for products. Because I didn't really have anyone helping me with computer stuff, as I do now, yeah. I'd just make the art exactly how I wanted it, and then scan that, and then that's what would get printed. Like these, they're just kind of big collages which are done. Basically, I'd make things to scale, we'd scan them, and that would be basically that. And then, but because it was a more professional operation, all of a sudden, yeah. and not just my school project, all of a sudden, there was I was introduced to things called merch plans and line sheets and things like that, and I was told you can't really make everything that you quite like can't be clothes, because it won't necessarily sell. So I ended up having these sort of what I started to think of as orphan artworks, which were made for clothes but never found their way onto clothes. Yeah. So I put them on walls, and I started doing art shows, and I was really productive. Every season of clothes was an art show in a way, and naturally, and partly because of my enthusiasm for doing the business, kind of because it wasn't doing it the way that I do it now, I suppose, the way exactly how I wanted to do it, my enthusiasm for that kind of subsided, and my enthusiasm for art, the kind of art which does go on walls, kind of spiked, and I started making things which have gone the wrong way. Well, that doesn't go on a wall, but you know what I mean. It's definitely not a product either. And so that's what I was doing for a period, and then I relaunched Thames independently in 2019. And now, over the last few years, running this business the way that I see fit, and really being creatively directing it, from writing newsletters to coming up with words to put on the shields, little prefect shields, pin badges, which I'm going to show in a minute, to doing the clothes, to taking pictures of people. Like, he's quite nice up there in the middle. Sick. In the clothes. You know, it's taken up a lot of my time, and it's kind of given me my creative fix that I used to get out of doing it the manual way. So whilst I've sort of taken a break in the past few years from making art in the manual, in the old-fashioned way, I've actually never been more productive and never been more creative, I think.
But how do you manage to kind of like, so basically you do a lot at once, and I'm guessing there's this like stream of ideas that just come to you. How do you manage to kind of do everything at once? I know you have a team, and I know you're about to do a show in Japan, and kind of you're mixing, doing something with your artwork and then doing something with clothes, and you have all these brilliant ideas going from skateboards to pictures to videos. So how do you do all of that at once and keep it consistent and keep it in the same theme?
It's all the same theme because I think, unlike a lot of brands, if I do have a team, but creatively we're very aligned, and the ideas are very, I mean, they're all coming from really the same place. It's not 10 designers who are all eventually wanting to do their own things and kind of giving them their sort of ideas that they wouldn't mind parting with for now and seeing if it all fits together. Yeah. It's all the same. It's really all the same in my head, and the process is almost always the same. When I skate, if I'm filming a skate video, if it's not for fun, I mean, if I'm really trying to do something, I'll do options and I'll pick the right one, and I'll like it. I'll like that one of the 10 options for a reason which I'm not even really quite sure of. It's an intuition. I have the same thing with pictures. You know, I'll set things up to a degree, but then I'll do options, exhaust everything, and pick my favorite thing, and I don't know what it will be until it's there, and I don't know why it is my favorite thing. There are never enough hours in the day. Yeah. I don't get done a fraction of what I want to get done, and everything that I cross off my to-do list means putting something else on. Yeah. But I think at this time, and it's very stressful sometimes. Yeah. But I think at this time of my life, I'm comfortable with that stress, paradoxically, because it's a good thing. It's a good feeling to be constantly letting one thing inform another. Yeah. It's almost in the completion of one project that you realize, if you're being pessimistic, what you should have done, more optimistically, what you'll do next time. Yeah. I think creativity really breeds creativity, and I don't think creativity needs to be confined to any one practice. Yeah.
So how do you get into the zone? So the question is, when you wake up in the morning, or let's say you have an idea, or let's say you want to get an idea, how do you get your ideas? Because you're very, I mean, when I got introduced to you, you were like England. That was you. Like when I think of the UK, and when I think of someone doing something that's representing the UK, I think of you. So what's your creative process? Do you spend your time looking at books? Do you spend your time in the city? How's that like for you?
When you said you were introduced to me, do you mean when we were in real life, personally introduced?
In real time.
How do I spend my... I don't wake up and wait for an idea. I wake up and do the idea, which I was thinking of until I went home. Yeah. the previous evening. When I think of something, I'll note it down. Yeah. And sometimes it's clothes, and sometimes it's a skate trick, or if I see something on the road, I'll take a picture of it, and I'll remember to come back to that with a skateboard. Or sometimes if I just think of a funny, I don't know, if I just overhear a funny sentence, because I just write it down. I have a long, I have a notes section on my phone. It's called "Everything's Going to Be All Right," and it goes. It's just everything, everything that I think is. Over the last year or so, that I thought, I should maybe do something with that. So I never really find myself needing to do anything to evoke, to prompt an idea. It's more that I can choose what to give my time to, because there's so much of it, it just multiplies naturally. I think the best thing really is to, as I said earlier, just to be open in your head and not categorize things in your head completely unnecessarily. It's all the same.
Yeah. And so basically another thing I've kind of seen you do is, one of the things I love from your brand is your pins, the shields. Can you kind of tell me about how you got into that?
I can show you them there. Well, when I relaunched Thames as Thames MMXX independently towards the end of 2019, I thought I'd closed it down because I didn't like the way that it was. I didn't like, I just wasn't really happy with the way that it was going for lots of reasons. And I actually didn't really have any intention of picking it back up. But I realized that I was missing making clothes, I was missing making products and reaching people for no money, as opposed to putting art in a gallery for people who happen to be there to see, or on a screen. But I thought, is that with the only real reason that I'm not going to do a brand unless it's going to be like something which doesn't already exist, I was just seeing there's so much in the world, and in many ways that's a good thing, and in many ways it's made almost nothing special. There's just so much creativity coming from so many people 100% of the time, that even when something is really brilliant, it's hard to appreciate it, because it's a bit like going to an art fair or something. Like, you just wouldn't even know if you like that, because you've seen 100 things sandwiched. It's sandwiched between 100 things. So I thought, I'm not gonna do a brand again. I'm not gonna make a business out of my creativity again unless it's going to be unique. And at the time, the UK skateboarding world, well, the whole skateboarding world, was kind of there were a few brands, namely Palace, who had influenced it so greatly that everything kind of looked the same. And I thought we could do something really different. So I suppose to look at to really simplify it, mine is actually a really simple psychology, and I'm kind of just a contrarian. If I see what everyone is doing, I kind of want to do the opposite, even if I don't initially really care about it. I've noticed that about myself a bit. So where Palace kind of cemented themselves as the titans that they are, making tracksuits, I thought, why don't we make cricket jumpers? And instead of taking every opportunity to kind of use like slang, we might use just like slip in Latin phrases and stuff instead. And the first and in music videos, instead of using house music, not that I'm not a fan of all of this stuff, no one had seen it more close up than me, or for such a long time. And I just wanted to do something really different. So instead of using skating to house music, I thought, why don't we skate to classical music? And I thought all of these things could be really interesting. Some people won't get it at all, but those people, I don't want to get it anyway. But other people will see it as it's really, one thing you couldn't say about it is that it already exists. Yeah. That's really the crucial litmus test, was then and still is now. The very first collection with that in mind was based off Prince George's school uniform. I thought, what would be the most unlikely inspiration for a British skate brand? And Prince George used to go to this school in Battersea. And so we made this navy V-neck jumper called the PG jumper, PG knit. And we've carried on making them in all sorts of different colours and styles. But with them we made these prefix shields, but instead of, well, some of them said what they would actually say on them, like milk monitor or head girl or something. But other ones say Billy Big Balls, or it's ones from Christmas crackers like Gangster Rapper and Ploughboy. It's some, we've just done so many over the years now. And I kind of think they're the sort of thing that the more there are of them, the better. Some of them sort of, a lot of them are very silly. Like, King of Leona Lewis. But some of them I think are really quite sweet, like Only Human, I like that one. The Caretaker on the keyring. Mudlarker, Billionaire to Be. It's just a kind of ongoing joke. That's what Thames is. That's what all of this is. It's just one long ongoing joke. Hopefully, long may it go on.
Yeah. And when you kind of get the quotes for your badges, do you kind of like write them at random, put them in a box and like pick it and then choose?
No, whenever I sort of come up with a word or just see a word, like sometimes I was in church on Saturday with my family. Q&A? Sure.
We've got 5 more minutes.
All right.
Be able to jump into it.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut
That's fine.
short.
Well, sometimes when I was on church on Saturday with my family, I saw this one that said the organ voluntary. Yeah. So I'll do something like that. I'll just write it down. But then we'll sort of pick them. We tend to do them about 6 at a time, and then go through. I pick colours through. I've got this really amazing old book of jockey racing silks. Yeah. It's you can see the colours together in different patterns and stuff, and that's kind of is a combination between the long list of random fake professions and words and the kind of colours as prompters from this Benson and Hedges Racing Silks book.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, we're being hurried along now, and we've been asked if you want to ask any questions.
I kind of feel to scale up your ideas, you need to start small. So it's like he said, it just all started with like a sticker idea. You have one sticker idea, and then you just keep adding to it, and then before you know it, you're world building. You have this one thing, and then it kind of like all rolls over to this giant big thing, and it takes time, and it takes like years. So basically, to scale up your idea, you need your 10,000 hours. You know what I mean? Oh, also, you need to have big ideas, and that's how it scales up.
I agree. I think the 10,000 hours thing is basically true, but I also think the people who are. I also think that time flies when you're having fun is true, and I don't think any of our favourite masters were counting those 10,000 hours becoming what they now are.
Yeah.
You were speaking about before how it's kind of the scene being flooded with so much creative ideas. In regard, how do you think social media has affected fashion and overall has been positive or negative?
Shall I take this one? I think social media, on the whole, has been negative. In theory, it's the biggest, the biggest thing for art, ever in many ways, or modern art, because it's totally democratized things. It's meant that you don't need a seal of validation, which perhaps before only a certain privileged few could have had. But at the same time, you're just flooded. You're just absolutely inundated. You just and not just with creativity, but just with information. And I think art, creativity, is the area of your life. It's the area of a person's life where one ought to be quite selfish and quite self-centered and actually focusing on what they're doing. And it's hard to focus on what you yourself are doing when you're so aware of everything, and largely against your will. Against your will.
We've got time for maybe one more question. Anyone would like? Oh, go for it at the front.
Quite a short one, but do you guys believe in manifestation? Do you think like where you guys are now is you've been intentional, you've sort of worked on it, or do you feel like you've just kind of gone with the flow and like
I feel like the person I'm gonna be or the person I want to be, I already knew that person when I was born. I wouldn't say it's manifestation because I don't really believe in manifestation. I believe in facts. And I feel like a fact is when you put your mind to something, it is bound to happen. All you need to do is basically just believe and just say, yes, this is the kind of person I want to be. And when I mean believe, don't believe it like, oh yeah, like it's coming, it's coming. Believe it like it's a fact. I am the greatest artist in the world. That's a fact. And then, yeah, you become the greatest artist, even if it's to yourself. You know what I mean?
I think it's fun that you don't really know what's going to happen. I think you can have great conviction and really deep-rooted desire to do a certain thing or be a certain person, but ultimately the fun of life and the point of life is that you don't know and you improvise. And for me personally, what I've realized is not that I always knew what I wanted to be or have a clear route. The one thing of which I'm certain is that when I go to bed at the end of the day, I want to know that I've done my best with, to do everything that's feasible within a realistic amount of time. That's the best idea I had at that time, and that was the best way that I could do it. And I know that I would rather fail trying than never know what could have been. I think that's another thing about social media, actually, just to come back to what you said. People are really worried about all of this evidence of things that they have failed at. You know, this digital handprint, whatever. No one cares. You've just got to keep trying, doing your best, and seeing where that takes you. Because one day you'll make something you're really proud of, and you wouldn't have done it if you hadn't done that thing which you really weren't that into in retrospectively.
So yeah, manifestation is real. Yeah, you're right.
didn't want camera.
Yeah, it's like a...
Hello. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Thanks for coming at 9 p.m. I know it's quite late. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, everyone at the back. Hi. Hello. So many seats for you to sit down or stand.
Yeah, thanks for coming. When the Tate asked if I wanted to do a conversation about South London and creativity, I just thought, who is the only other person that I know that reps South as much as I do, which is you.
Yep.
So, but yeah, we haven't really spoken about our collective work. Really, I feel like we just make the work and then we're like
on to the next
one. So I'm excited about this. We don't like introducing ourselves, so we're going to introduce each other.
Yeah, we're going to attempt to introduce each other.
I will start.
All right.
This is Caleb Femi. Caleb is a polymath and a visionary. This guy just does what he wants. Why? Thank you. Caleb is someone that does everything. When I met Caleb, he was a teacher and a poet. I think he had just won the Roundhouse Poetry Slam. And you were just like, I want to do it all. I just want to make everything because I'm the best and I'm great. He's a filmmaker, a writer, an award-winning author, an award-winning everything, actually. And also someone that has been the first to do a lot of things as well. Caleb will do anything from a huge Louis Vuitton campaign to an art film to a poetry movement film to straight now to drama to directing sex scenes on Industry. And that just shows the breadth of the work that you do. I've always really respected your audacity to just try things. And I feel at the end of everything, you're just yeah, I did that. I'm the shit. This is great. And so that's always made you a really exciting artist. A few years ago, he released a collection of poems called Paul. And you came up for the title for this in like 2018. And I remember you telling me, I'm gonna write a book and it's gonna be called Paul. And then like 3 years later, put out that collection of really stunning poems that I feel really just encapsulated everything about growing up in the kind of spaces that we grew up with, the people that we grew up around, and the sort of mixture of experiences that come with that. That's Caleb Femi. Yeah, I'm finished. Okay, go on. I'm finished now.
Yeah, the sex scene in the
it's
industry.
the first scene that pops up on the first episode that you direct.
All right, so hi
car.
guys. Tobi is actually one of my oldest friends, if we do the maths, and someone who has been integral to my life in many ways, which I will get to. Tobi is actually the true visionary, actually the one who is a cultural pillar, I would say, because there are some incredibly important things, and there are scores and scores, hundreds and hundreds of people who have been introduced to the arts or who have had access to the arts because of Tobi's initiatives and just general movement across many art forms. The Black Ticket Project, Tobi's the founder of that. All right, so people know that. Dem Ones, which is her current production company, which is also more than a production company, but we'll get to that later on. I don't want to spoil it. Theatre was where we first met in 2015, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2015. And actually, Tobi was the one who gassed me to have the audacity to do anything. And at the time, you was pretty young.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was 18, 19.
Yeah. And I was just like, I remember like when we sat down, the aura was just there from that age, and you were like, you should do this. You could do more than just what you're doing right now. And it was leaving that conversation that just kind of put a battery in my back to be like, okay, cool. At least there's one person who's like trying to pattern and who has this audacity, and therefore that imbued me with that same level of like, if it flops, it flops, and you just kind of move on. But if it works, that's something that's quite nice. Tobi's a BAFTA winner. Tobi has won the L Woman of the. Please tell me the actual. Come on, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're running out of time. We've got half an hour.
Award winning across the board in yeah, please. And in TV, in film, documentaries, everything. There's a feature film that Tobi's working on this summer as well. I don't know if I was allowed to say that, but here we go. NDAs and that. And so look, that I think one of the best things of being friends with Tobi is that whenever I have a crazy idea, I know that like the person who can actually do the hard work is and who's actually bonkers enough to go along with it is Tobi. So yeah, here's to you.
Cool. So this was the first project that we worked on, Wishbone, which I can't actually remember how it came about, other than you kind of had this poem. Rui, I think, made the track to it. Mm-hmm. And you sort of came to me, you were like, I want to make this sort of film. I never made a film before. at that time. So I was also like, why would you ask me? But then, like you said, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And we shot that at Battersea Art Centre, which is, I guess, like, that was where I was working, but that was like our meeting space. I think this was actually one of the last things that I did there before I left.
It was actually. It was that we just got it done just before you left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I left. And it was also like something that you were kind of in, but the focus wasn't on you. And I feel like this project was like the beginning of you like really trying to experiment with moving image or that kind of like visual world more, after sort of like trying to pull things off the stage. What was the sort of like point for you to sort of be like, actually, I want to really start experimenting with film or moving image, and this is the project to do that?
So at the time, I just like, I think I'd just left uni and started teaching because I didn't know what else to do. And one of the worst things about poetry, the PR of poetry is horrible, it's horrendous. And much of that is down to the curriculum that we're in. So I was looking at that, I was looking at how do we like actually like bring more people, more young minds especially, into the conversation of poetry. But also like, what am I doing as a poet, and how am I contributing to the landscape of poetry over the years? Like, it's easy to like write stuff or write in forms and techniques that have been made already for you, but like we live in a very unique time because we're the first sort of wave with the internet and this level of technology. How does poetry keep up with this conversation? How does it keep up with the many changing hues that every other art form is going through? So this was kind of my sort of answer to that. That was the mandate. And also like, it was important that we did it in South because I felt like it needed to, at the bottom of it, have something. I don't know, I had this like real strong allegiance to like the spaces that birth your ideas and like always returning back to it. There's a fear of like creating stuff and then like moving into a space like this, and then like where your work germinated from is like cut off. So there needed to be like a cohesiveness, a cyclical nature to it.
This shoot was really difficult. Caleb is someone that is just like, you're just very ambitious with the things that you want to do. You could be like, we got £2.50, but I want fire and drones and underwater scenes and all of this kind of stuff. And in retrospect, this wasn't actually that hard because we also had like Elsa and like the amazing dancers and everyone that kind of worked on it, and like a really experienced team for someone that was like super inexperienced. I think the space was it left me quite vulnerable actually, because I was also doing it in a building that I was very familiar with, and I was like at that time in my stride with sort of like, this is what I think I'm good at, this is what I know that I want to do. And this was like left field, but also really exciting to sort of look at all the different ways that you could use poetry. And I think we had many conversations about that, like what can poets do beyond open mics, doing a slam, put out a pamphlet, put out a full collection, do some workshops somewhere in between. That was sort of this like formula to what it meant to be a poet. And I think like you, Julian, like you were kind of like in this era of poets that were just like, fuck all of that, I don't want to do any of that, I want to like do my own thing. And maybe also just maybe like being alienated by poetry as a sort of like industry because of that, because of sort of like wanting to move away from the status quo. But I think this film sort of like, for me, like represents like the beginning of something in our careers where it was sort of like, we can actually do this, like really and truly, if we wanted to. There is something here worth pursuing. Even though I hated the DOP that worked on this.
I hated him too. He was an op. No,
he was an op, man.
He was a nasty piece of work.
I said to Caleb the other day, I'm like an elephant with this shit. Like, you know that elephant that came back to that woman's funeral? And like, if I saw that guy on road, I'd be like, you made my life hell when I was 19. But other than that, it was great. It was really nice.
Yeah.
And then straight after that, we worked on Slog, which I call your rapper era.
Yeah, see, this is when, you see, it's not good to have friends and like work as well, because like they keep you very humble and they make you like realize that, like, you know, it's not my rap era. I wasn't trying to rap.
You made a whole EP.
Oh yeah, all right. So no. In my defense, the reason why I made that was because I wanted to essentially create a soundtrack for. I wanted to create this like hybrid thing where I created something that like you can also experience in real life. So like the whole, it's a 4-track. It's hardly an EP. It's 4 tracks, and essentially it's like these like people have been invited. They received like an anonymous invitation to come to like something like this. They don't know what it's for, and it's a recruitment. And essentially, it's like recruiting them into this like secret society, and this society essentially like is separate from like the rest of the world. It's like an escape place, you know. And essentially, what happened in real life is, I don't know if anyone here remembers, we sent out lots of invitations to people anonymously and was like, turn up at this place at this time. And like people did, and then we hired a bus and we put them in a bus and we took them somewhere, didn't know where they were going, and we like did the whole spiel. So like they got to experience exactly what it's like, bringing art to life. And then like there's a visual component as well, which is like exactly the same thing as well. So that was like the overall thing there that has been like boiled down to my rap era.
But there was an era of like you being like, I could also maybe be like a music artist.
Furthermore, I used to go on private radio station when I was 14. You know, so maybe Toby, there's truth in that. And this is why don't be friends, because when you tell them all your secrets.
But so the title of this film, Secret Life of Jesus, is also one of the titles on that EP, which was actually my favorite song on the EP. I listened to the EP, I thought it was good. I'm just saying, you were in your rap era. But I really loved this concept. And we did this straight after doing Wishbone. So again, this was sort of like you being like, how can you scale up? And we did something like that was like indoors in the workplace to like, where was this, Wales?
Wales, yeah. Abergavenny.
On like some random some person.
He was a friend from uni, and he like had a nice patch of land. So I asked him if we could use it, and he said yeah.
And yeah, just like, and then I was working at the Bush Theatre at the time. Yeah. Doing a festival called Babylon. That was sort of like in response to all the fuckery that was happening at the time that I was working there. Brexit happened, Grenfell happened. I just felt like there was a lot that was going on. And that was sort of in response to that. And I was sort of like, if you could do anything like in that space, what would you want to do? And then you were like, well, I'm going to hire a bus and bring people to this space, and then we're going to have this sort of like in-person like experience. I remember you made everyone had like a little like bus ticket, a bespoke bus ticket. Like there was the attention to detail and so much thought went into it. I feel like this is still replicated in the work that you're doing now with Slog House and sort of like you bringing things to life. Why is it important for you to sort of like maintain that kind of like physical artistic space? Because you've done so much in film and so much in TV. You could just go and do that and not necessarily like create these sort of like gathering spaces, but you still you still do it and you're still innovating with it as well. What about it interests you? Like, what does it evoke?
I think the backbone of anything that has inspired me up until maybe my adult age was like spaces, third spaces, hanging out with the neighborhood, hanging out with my friends, speaking to people, just the physicality of like being in a space with people. There's nothing that like can really be substituted for that. And I felt that like in everything that I was trying to do, I think I was always trying to return to conversation. I just wanted to make art that allowed us to have conversations with one another. I think there was a time we talked about theatre, and like one of the redeeming sort of qualities of theatre is the fact that like you're in a space with someone who's it's visceral, and then afterwards you're like with people as well who have felt that same thing. You go outside, you have a discussion about it, and there's a reason why it's probably our oldest art form in humanity, and it will hopefully it will never die out. As much as like the screen is important, spaces, nothing. There's no substitute for it.
I thought you were gonna say something. And then, so like between Secret Life of G's and this, there's probably like 5 or 6 years. And I mean, I feel the difference. Even just like working with you on La High, I felt the difference. Obviously, I mean, we're older, like, and all of that kind of stuff. But I think also there was like a refinement to the way that you work as well. I feel like when we first met, you had this like creative chaoticness about you that was sort of like, I want to throw everything at the wall and kind of like see what sticks, which is a really also like beautiful way of collaborating when we also like didn't have like people that we were accountable to, and we also didn't have budget. Like we were just like playing with what we could at the time, and then sort of like coming onto this project, which you've sat with a lot longer than I have. I think I was born to this project 2 weeks before we made it. 10 days? No, 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
Before we made it. It's one of my favorite things that I've made, like personally. And I feel like it was also probably one of the funnest sets that I've been on, like that day that we were just like in the LED studio, and it just felt like everyone was just like cool and in high spirits, and everything just kind of flowed. And there was still that sense of like playing around and seeing what stuck, especially because it was also Sampha's first film and him sort of being a part of that process. But there's so much in this that to me, I'm just like, this is such a Caleb film. Like this to me is like your brain in film form, even down to like what they're wearing and like the way that you kind of like wanted things to look, and the kind of like way it's laid out, and the things that you tried that weren't planned but ended up being in the film anyway. Talk to me a little bit about this process pre like me coming into it.
So we had been working together kind of from like April, Sampha and I, and the album was basically done at the time, so it wasn't on the album. It was more just like the story, the conversation, for such a complex album, him returning back to music after 5-6 years away, just thinking about like how do we bridge the gap with audiences who don't know him because 5 years, or audiences who have known him, but this new conversation that he's having, he's also changed as a person. So much of the themes of the album was like we were just cooking really, and there was various like iterations of stuff that we were doing. We were working across like all the creative strategy sort of planes. from live shows to like online stuff. How the album. Of course, there's so many people in this. It's just not the two of us in a room. And then with the film, there was so many. Sometimes just with all the things that were happening, we didn't think it was good. We knew we wanted to make it. And we knew we wanted to make it together, but timings and like the scale and the budget, and at one point it just got to a point where we had 10 days. Like the cutoff point was like in 10 days time, and like the only person that I knew that was as balmy to take on such a like ambitious project was you. But also I hadn't worked with you for 5 years. Like we had like gone off and done various things, and just life just took us in just made us really busy. So there was a real excitement. It felt like working together all over again. But then also like there was a real level of trust. Seeing all the other things that you had done in that time, I knew that there was like the right skill set, but also the right understanding of like what we're trying to do, and also accommodating for like Sampha, because it's also his first co-direction as well. How did you deal with that 10 days? Because it was absolutely like...
It was mad.
If it didn't happen, no one would be mad.
Yeah, I remember like being on like a Zoom meeting, and I think I was getting my hair done in Tottenham. I'm a hair salon. They're great. And just being like, you have to say yes to this today. Like, if you want it to happen, you have to say yes to this today. And then something was like, oh, fuck it, let's do it. And then that's kind of like, that was the confirmation to push forward. I think there was one day that we were shooting on the underground guerrilla, because that's like $1,000 an hour to like shoot in certain stations. And I was like, we don't have that money.
I really wish I got the photo up. Like,
it's really beautiful.
We literally had to just like
stay on the train.
Magliners on the train. We were hopping train station. We would like, we had to get it done, and we were trying to get it done for free. Yeah,
we had to sort of like map where the train door would stop. And where the two actors would be, this mother and daughter. And then the doors would open, and then it would be like, roll, 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 and then the doors would close, and then we would go. Because they caught us at one station. They came like running down the platform. They were like, you're not allowed to film here. And I was just like, oh, I didn't know, sorry. So there was just so much that kind of like went on. That was just the nature of like making the specific film. But I just really loved the sort of like ambition of it, to shoot on film, and to sort of like, it also just, it wasn't a music video, like there wasn't a soundtrack that we were making a film to. It was sort of like Sampha in post, sort of like pulling like everything together. It was chaotic. It was really chaotic.
And it was all done in South London.
All in South, all obviously.
There's like a real comfort, like shooting in South, I'm so comfortable with it.
I never get to do it, which is really sad. No one likes shooting in South for some reason. But I mean, apart from me, obviously. But like everyone's always like, let's go to East. So this was really nice to just like basically have it on the doorstep. But it's like, it is genuinely like one of my favorite projects. I think part of that was also like us working together again. But in like this slightly more refined way, where we sort of like had an understanding of the kind of work that we wanted to make.
Because we were going to work on this Channel 4 project. Was it after this or before this?
That was before this.
That was before this, yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't align, but I think the right thing sort of aligned. There were so many slides and no time, so I guess like questions, and as if anyone has questions, and then I'll just click through the slides so people can see what's on these slides. Oh no, this is DLR.
DLR South, yeah. Which is its own. If anything, I don't know what's worse, DLR or there's just more, like, you stand out more in the DLR.
Yeah.
And we stood out sometimes like a sore thumb. And they all radio each other, so like the next station...
we couldn't go to a next station.
Yeah, the next station is like waiting for the people, the film crew.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
What's next after this?
After this is fashion.
Oh, right. Okay. Questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I never waited. I feel that, this is gonna, guys, I don't know how this is gonna come out, but someone said this to me, like, and it still feels nice, so I'll just say it. Ideas aren't your own, like they come to you because they trust you to birth them into reality.
Such a poet, man.
No. if you don't do it, they'll just move on to somebody else who also is as capable as you.
Yeah.
So for me, I was just like, every idea I get, I'm just like, I want to do this now because I have to honor this, and having people around you who are just as like energetic is important. Not like, we literally had shoestring budget to make stuff, and even up to date till today, if I had 200 quid, I will make something with that. But if you find the right like-minded people, you can get stuff done. Really, producers are if you get a balmy producer, your job is done, because they really are the ones doing most of the work. You just show up and take the credit.
Facts.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I can't actually see.
There's a mic as well, so you don't have to shout.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Oh, someone at the front. There's a person at the front.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to understand, like, especially for those of us who are not from South London, like, what is the pride? And it's not like, I don't mean it in a kind of shade like you shouldn't have that pride. But it's more that I find it fascinating because I think some of the proudest Londoners that I've met in my life are South Londoners, and I wanted to understand that. And also, sorry, like, how you feel. Yeah. And also, like, why it was important to you to sort of express and represent South London in your work, if you feel like you have done that.
You could go to anywhere in the world, and a DJ could be like, anyone from South, and everyone would be like, yeah, like, we're just everywhere. South London is the capital of London, as I like to say. Gang, gang, gang. I just think, like, I think culturally there are lots of movements and expressions of creativity that have been pillared in areas in South London. Kind of like the reasons like why people sort of like gravitated to those areas are sort of like really vast. A lot of it is actually like rooted in like deep racism and poverty and kind of like a lot of these things, but still being able to kind of like make these areas of joy and expression. So like, I grew up in Southwest London. I spent a lot of time in Southeast London because that's where all the hall parties were when I was growing up. You would have like just a road full of like Nigerian hall parties. It was like the Ibiza strip of hall parties. Like that's just kind of like, and people would come from all over to go to these specific places. They were just always things that were happening that were like really rooted in making sure you did not forget where you came from. And it was generational. So also like looking at like my parents and my parents' parents, and sort of like when they first came to the UK, like a lot of their experiences of meeting other people and finding their community and finding these senses of joy just happened in South. And I think I think also like when you're living in this Babylon, like really and truly, like where are you gonna take pride in this country? You gotta pick somewhere. Personally, that's it for me. Like I wouldn't even say like I'm British. Like, I'm very specifically a South Londoner. Like that is why I identify. When I'm talking about being British, I'm talking about certain things that were happening in the areas that I grew up in and the people that I grew up around. It's the rooting point of my identity and my cultures when it comes to this specific country. And the things that I take pride in are there. I think everyone kind of has that affinity to the areas that they grew up in, because you, like I said, like if you're trying to find something to hold on to, an ounce of like pride in this Babylon, like it's gonna be like where you grew up and where you kind of found that joy and expressions and kind of like what's made you like who you are today. But I think the reason that you just hear about it a lot is because we're just everywhere, which I also like. I love that for us. Like I love that I can say to someone that I grew up in Battersea and they'll be like, which estate? And they'll like go through all the estates and like mention my specific one. Like there's just a closeness there. For me anyway. I'm very prideful when it comes to South though. I talk about it all the time.
Access like transport as well. South was like, I don't know, growing up I didn't really feel like there was that many, apart from the Northern Line and the Victoria Line. I don't really remember.
It's just bus.
It was like just the only way of like moving around. Even if you want to go from like southwest to southeast, is as long as going from like south to north, you know. So we were like kind of cut off from the rest of the city as well.
Yeah, but I wouldn't change it for anything at all. Thanks everyone. It's really late, so I appreciate you all sticking around. Get home safely.
Are we finished?
God bless.
Okay.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye. Time goes